Hello, thanks for having me, and apologies from the beginning. I was supposed to be at my destination already. Instead, I'm at an airport, and so I'm waiting for the boarding. But I think I will be able to finish the talk. So I want to quickly talk about existential risk that may emerge from systemic and compound risk. And as you can see from the two-sentence summary, our hypothesis is that often existential risk is primarily associated with single high-impact hazards. But we think that one should also think very strongly about how systemic risk can lead to existential risk. If you want to get to more interaction with us, maybe you can look at the risk count that you see the reference here, the link here, or contact me on Twitter or via email. We come more from the climate risk community to some extent, and we have been looking at for example, as a Russian heat wave as an example of systemic risk, where everything started from a high pressure system, very nice weather, but that means on top of climate change, heat wave and drought, which then caused stress for ecosystems, for vegetation, desiccation of vegetation, leading to forest fires, which then led to air pollution with nitrous oxides and fine dust, causing changes in the air chemistry. And only this, together with the health systems, then led to this strong mortality, excess mortality in Moscow and other regions. On the other hand, the vegetation stress itself, of course, affected also the agricultural systems with crop failure, particularly related to wheat, which then had impact on wheat prices, high volatility of them. And this is certainly already outside my own domain of research, basically, but what you hear is that these kind of conditions at least acted as a risk multiplier for social instability in the Arab countries. So that's kind of the idea. And of course, this didn't lead to overall global existential risk. But the question is, if there are further trickle-down effects and domino effects, what could happen then, and are we prepared for that? Maybe just another example. Actually, we conceived these things long before COVID, of course, but COVID, of course, 19 is another very good example of systemic risk. And I give you just one example for SDG 4, quality education. You see with all the lockdown events that the measures to combat the virus directly led to a lot of indirect effects, like these school closures, that were particularly prevalent in low and medium income countries, and which then basically lead to dominoes effect of interrupted learning, strain on the parents, gaps in childcare, unattended children, also riskier behaviors, exploitation of children, and at the end, child labor. So we actually see that many of the positive trajectories that we have seen in the last years have been basically returned back through the systemic interactions. Last but not least, would like to quote from this UNDRR policy brief led by Jana Silman, who is also on our risk can, which should just show, it's a little bit complex, this graph, but it should just show that the systemic risk can happen through shocks outside the system of consideration, so exogenous system shocks, here the orange triangle, but this can of course also happen from things happening within the system. So both like external shocks like asteroids or extreme weather events, one can already discuss if these are internal or external, of course, should be considered, but also internal events like, unfortunately, what we have seen just now, conflict and war, or financial crisis and so on should be also considered and seen together. And again, our key question is, how can we study if such systemic emergence of risk can be also existential? This is my short input here. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations for, as if the time pressure wasn't enough, that you've added the additional difficulty of transport in this. Right. Is there any questions in the room? If not, I'll just add two quick thoughts about your link between food and instability. There's been some great work done by our colleagues at the Global Sustainability Institute at Anglia Ruskin University here in Cambridge. I think it's called like the Food Price Crisis Map or something like that. Yeah, it's really very, very interesting on kind of establishing that link. I think we've got a question from Nat.
Hi, yeah, I'm abusing the privilege of being the person who's holding the microphone. Hi, I'm Natalie Jones. I'm here at CSER. I was just wondering, I really enjoyed your talk. I think your work is really great. I was wondering what your future plans are. What kind of other examples are you going to look at, or where is this extending to, basically?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. On the one hand, in the risk-con, we are trying to do more of conceptual work and actually work together with stakeholders to see actually what are the risks that are expected. So I think that we can have a better foresight of risk. But what I've seen at your conference also is trying to come to better modeling, and I think this agent-based modeling approaches connected to data should be also a method that should be further put forward, and that's also something that we will be trying quite completely. And actually, collaboration welcome.
Great. Other questions from the room? If not, I may abuse as well. Yeah, so I was just interested if you had any initial thoughts that you wanted to share on the exogenous shock that we've all lived through over the last few months of the Ukraine crisis, and any effects that you any kind of immediate ripple effects that have been particularly noteworthy to you, or you think that do you think that could work well as a case study?
Yes, certainly. Yes, I mean, of course, that's more an endogenous shock, I would say. I mean, it's created from the political system itself, but yeah, we see that. I think I'm more expert, let's say, in ecosystems and food and this kind of thing. So I think we see already actually the accumulation of the decreasing imports together with climate change and climate stress currently in East Africa, together with COVID, which these three compound events basically are leading to very, very strong stress and actually famine in East Africa. So I think that's actually almost a prime example. And the question is, and actually maybe that's your third day global solutions, how one could prevent that. I think we should be really looking into these areas. People are discussing a lot in Germany that our economy is going down a few percent or not growing anymore too much. But I think the real effects we will have in other countries like in East Africa.
Yeah, we've got a question here at the front.
Joachim Isaacson from UK MOD, and thank you for an absolutely excellent presentation. My thought is when you look at the complex events like the pandemic in Ukraine and so on, where do you limit yourself with indirect implications and so on? I'm sitting with that issue just as we speak, basically.
Yes, I think that's actually also a very good question, because at some point it is maybe even hard to say what are indirect effects. So because they usually get smaller and smaller, but then they can be latent and then they come up later, and it hasn't been really seen that there are some, let's say, internal states in the system that create another risk. And I think that's actually one of the key challenges to understand where susceptibility, systemic susceptibility happens through these kind of events. And that would be also actually one of my fear, that we are getting more and more stressed kind of through the different events, so that susceptibility will increase more and more without we can really diagnose it. And I think that we should work towards.